You and I with Rashmi Shetty is a human library audio podcast bringing in stories of people you and I can draw inspiration from. Ordinary folks, extraordinary lives, their uniqueness and individuality, making them interesting to talk to and to listen to. Each one of them completely connected to the voice in me and with motivational stories of moving beyond themselves to make a difference in the world. A reaffirmation of the fact open your eyes wider. The world is far more beautiful when we acknowledge the presence of both you and I. We design with care and build with conscience. We do not just create products or buildings. We weave a resilient fabric of dignity that empowers every woman and sustains an entire community. This International Women's Day, we celebrate the architect of such change. Today's spotlight on my Human Library audio podcast, You and I with Rashmi Shetty, is on Nivedita Banerji, co-founder of Samaj Pragati Sahayog, SPS for short. Nivedita has dedicated over 3 decades to the tribal communities, especially the women of Narmada Valley. Her work seamlessly integrates social justice, sustainable design, and economic independence. As a former secretary and current director at SPS, she pioneered strategies to build women-led local institutions, ensuring marginalized regions have a decisive voice in India. With Kumbaya, which is a social enterprise that she founded in 1994, this award-winning producer company empowers over 2,500 women and persons with disabilities through ethical, circular garment design. It is now an internationally recognized artisan-owned brand. A self-taught architect, she has designed over 45,000 square feet of eco-friendly infrastructure. Her work rejects box-like industrial construction in favor of energy-efficient domes, walls, and local materials that honor rural dignity. A respected voice in national planning, she served on the Government of India's 12th Five-Year Plan Working Group and has co-authored influential manuals on watershed management and Indian textiles. She has featured as a panelist for the International Fund for Agricultural Development in Rome and has been a keynote speaker at the international conferences on narrative practices and indigenous economies. She is the winner of the CITI, the City Textile Sustainability Award in 2024, and the director of the award-winning documentary, The Kumbaya Story. Listen in as Nivedita Banerji shares her incredible journey with the tribal women and the lessons that she has learned from them. Hi, Nivedita. Such a pleasure having you on You and I with Rashmi Shetty. I've met you very briefly before, and just a glimpse of what you do and the energy and vibe that you exude made me curious to have this long conversation with you on this Women's Day special. So, welcome. And before we go ahead to what you currently do, which is inspiring, I want to know what little Nivedita was all about and take us through your childhood.
Well, thank you for having me here, Rashmi. It's really a pleasure to be here. And, you already told me that you have this podcast. And to be frank, I've not done too many of these. So, I don't have any idea what's coming. But the idea of talking to you, when we met last was very interesting. And especially since it's a Women's Day special, I'm very grateful to be here with you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure what I was like as a child, but I can tell you what my childhood was like. So it was a very extraordinary childhood, I would say. When I compare my childhood with all my peers and my friends, I realized that I truly had a very privileged background in terms of the number of people in my life, who brought me up, who influenced me. were very exceptional people. So so my parents were extraordinary in that sense. They both Ma and Baba were, they had fallen in love, and they had sort of run away and gotten married. They were, one is Assamese, my mother's Assamese, my father is Bengali, and we were all. I have two siblings, a brother and a sister. And very early in life, when I was 3 years old, Baba went to the US. So my initial schooling was in the US, you see, where I was probably the only brown child in a totally white suburb of, of an area where he used to work. And that kind of childhood was, right from your childhood, you saw a certain type of inequality or racism. You were made aware of these things. But I had this really exceptional father who made you feel that you and you alone are really special. So when I would come back and tell him that, this happened, he'd coach me in ways of, in how to be confident, how not to bother, and how to confront everything that scared me, everything that scared me with courage. So he was very particular about that. So whether it was, I was scared of a dog while walking to the school bus, or I was scared of a bully, he would never let me just rest at that. He would make sure that, I fought back. And my mother was, very, very gentle and very talented, both of them. So I grew up in music and art, and all their friends, wherever they went, they made friends. So that was a very big start in my life, this, the number of people. And then when we came back from America very early, he didn't stay there. And because he wanted to, although he had a green card, they wanted to come back because he wanted to teach. Right from a very, very privileged cancer research institute, he came back to a very small university in India, which was just beginning. So then my childhood, right from New York State, came back to a place called Meerut, where I didn't know the language. And I learned Hindi literally. So again, they were there, making sure that, it wasn't something that I should be intimidated by. So then from there, the whole childhood that I had was in a rural area. Almost the campus was very close to a rural area. And I grew up in fields and playing with children. There was no timing. Like today, when I see children, they have such timings. We had no timings. Nobody called us back, even though it was 10 at night. And we'd be playing at potato fields, sugarcane fields, guava orchards. So I had a very active, very lively childhood, very free. So, and they sort of encouraged that. And then each of my grandparents, again, when I look back, see, when you're a child, you don't realize all that. But when you look back, so all four of my grandparents were extremely, how do I say, very, very exceptional people. So from my father's side, my grand dadu was somebody who had studied in Shanti Niketan, was extremely learned. And my grandmother, my Didu, was a maths teacher. She had done a BSc, so they were all extremely educated, very accomplished. And all of them were into music and art. And then on my mother's side, my grandfather was the head of the Left Democratic Front, and my grandmother was a very, very very dedicated social worker. So the influences around me were many, and I grew up like that with music and art, and a lot of craft and a lot of exposure to different kinds of things. So the other thing that used to happen in our house was that my parents always believed in supporting, they were university professors. So every student who was poor or who was from a region where they would be feeling odd in the north would be staying at our house. So we always had big meals. So the meals were not very great. I mean, they were just ordinary rice and dal, but there were at least 10 people sharing that meal. So I grew up in a collective kind of atmosphere where there was no division actually. We were very distinctly. I remember as a child, I was unaware actually of caste and of religion. And these things only came later in my life, where again, my parents explained in a very different way. But I was not aware of these things because the people I grew up with were Muslim and Dalit and men and women and poor and rich, all sitting together and eating in a house where they were all treated as family. And I grew up thinking that they are my family too. So that is what my childhood was like, very free, and where also my parents did not ever make me feel that I'm a girl. That was again something I realized, that I grew up very differently from other children. The world told me that I am, so we were allowed to do anything that we felt like. We were given that freedom. And I was treated like an adult. It came with a lot of responsibility. So that's what I feel when I compare my life with, a lot of my peers. I feel that I did actually get a very extraordinary childhood.
Truly extraordinary, and you are fortunate because from every side, the influence has been so telling on the way you look at life as well. But how are you in studies?
I came from a background where my English was more fluent. I usually did well without effort. And also, the expectation in my house was that you have to do well. So, my father is a scientist, and my mother was studying psychology, but she was somebody who was studying primate behavior. So I have a mother who used to go to a lab where she was operating on the brains of monkeys. So she was studying the functions of the brain, and so I grew up understanding her work. I grew up literally roaming around in my father's lab. So there were chemistry labs and there was this primate lab. And the idea was that you should be curious, should learn. They used to always tell me, never be scared of asking a question, never be scared of saying, I don't know. So that was more important than actually getting any position. I don't think I've ever been told you have to come first. But what was told very clearly was that you cannot treat people unfairly. You have to give back. You have to understand that you come from a privileged background because you get 3 meals a day. So they would not let us leave a grain of rice on the plate. You always were made aware of that very much, that you are only going to a good school because you just are lucky enough to be born in a family that is middle class and not poor. That was more of an emphasis.
And with such a strong academic background at home, what was the subject that drew you with your curiosity that you continued further in your graduation level?
What I really wanted to do was, strangely enough, I wanted to do two things. I wanted to do architecture and I wanted to be a doctor. I was very clear about these two things. Both, in a formal sense, did not happen. I took up science. I was deeply interested in science. As a young person, you're not very wise. So I was so enthusiastic about science in my 11th and 12th that I would land up sometimes asking questions in class, and maybe my science teachers would not like that, or maybe even correcting something because I had read up before or something like that. I realized that I was probably not very inclined studying science in a particularly systematic way. I went way beyond because my father was there and his students were there, and the discussions in our house when they were on RNA or DNA were much more advanced than what people teach in class 11 and 12. So you picked up a lot. I don't think that was appreciated required in your board
True.
at board levels. And at that time, there was a whole thing about coaching and stuff in science, which I didn't feel like doing. Ultimately, I gave up the idea of pursuing science or appearing for medical school, and I kind of went into studying literature.
I thought you said architecture was the other thing that.
Yeah, so architecture required maths.
Math, yeah.
My school did not offer maths in class
Okay.
11 and 12. So
Okay.
that was one of the things,
Okay.
consequences of that. But I studied literature because after a point, if I couldn't be a doctor, I think I was a bit disheartened. And it didn't matter to me. And literature, because my parents wanted me to study in Delhi. So I went to Indraprasth College,
Okay.
and literally Indraprasth College, because it was close to the bus stand and I could just come home easily because Meerut was 2 hours away from Delhi. So I studied literature because I felt that was easy for me to do. And I continued to study literature in my post graduation as well. I went to JNU after that. But by that time, I was very clear in my mind that I wanted to do something for people, because I automatically, during college or even before college, I remember a very, very brief meeting in my class 9 or 10 where I just saw Mother Teresa in person. She had come to our school, and I remember being very moved. I couldn't forget her, this frail person who works with people who have leprosy. And we had gone to a place of where there were, leprosy patients and all that. So I was just very, very moved by that here is somebody who's working with people's rotting flesh and absolutely marginalized people with such devotion. And that never went from my mind. And therefore, I wanted to be a doctor because I thought that I'll help people. But that I couldn't do. So then it was very clear that I must do something. And in Delhi, those days, there was you know, there was this whole feminist movement at that time, the anti-dowry movement. Then there was other protests happening on various issues, and I automatically started joining those things. And then I came across a group of young people who were doing street theater. They had come to my college, and I was very, very enthralled by that, by this group of young people in colleges. And so I joined their street theater group. And all those young people who are there in the group, many of them are still today. I mean, we then crafted a future together. So we used to do street theater in all the factories of Delhi, trade union meetings, on top of Palika Bazaar in Connaught Place, where our plays were about inflation, were about unfairness, like during the Asiad Games, where these big structures were built by very, very poor migrant labor who had no protection. So it was such a paradox that we were witnessing. And our plays were about later on, the Sikh riots, in 1984, and then so all these things we used to do, and they were all political plays that were upsetting certain powerful people. And they were very radical plays. So there was a thrill of doing that and being surrounded by a crowd. It's like an arena which is very alive, and you are almost enacting something and in conversation with the crowd around you. But then we always used to feel at the end of the day, you go back to the safety of your house.
Yeah.
Right? And so what were we doing? And one of the times when we were doing a play, in the audience, there were widows of the people who had been impacted by the riots.
Okay.
And they found it unbearable, and they started crying. And that, I think, made all of us stop and think about what were we doing, And slowly after that, we all decided that we wanted to work more directly with communities and in rural areas. So around that time, this is the late 80s, the Narmada Bachao Andolan started.
Mm.
And that was also led by Baba Amte.
Yeah.
So we met Baba Amte at that time, and he was involved with the Narmada Bachao Andolan, and that actually was the moment that everything came together. Because while we were there, we also felt that it is important for us to show an alternative. If we are saying no to big dams, then what is the alternative? How does one ensure water for rural areas? And we shifted to actually the Narmada Valley in Madhya Pradesh.
Mm.
So there were 10 of us. We were 10 friends, and most of us had done street theater together. Then there were other people who joined us. So these 10 young people, they just shifted to a rural area in Madhya Pradesh, and we started our organization, which Baba called Samaj Pragati Sahayog.
Mm.
We worked with watershed management, which is the exact opposite of big dams, where you make small dams and small structures with
Mm.
uh, earthen structures. So we started with that. We started with ensuring water harvesting in the local area around farms, because 80% of India's population is agrarian, is in rural areas. And out of that, most of them work on agriculture. And again, most of them are small and marginal farmers with literally depending on rain-fed agriculture. So ensuring water was the first priority we felt that we should work on.
Mm.
And that led to many, many different things. So, for instance, when we started working on water, we obviously had to think of agriculture, because when you're, harvesting water, then you cannot grow water intensive crops. What are the crops that are most appropriate for the region? And then when you started working on agriculture, slowly the incomes of people went up. Instead of one crop, they were taking two crops or three crops because of water and better seeds that we were working in. And then when the incomes went up, who is the person who's controlling that income? And that is where our work with women came in. And I used to always feel when I saw women in a village, when you grow up with a certain kind of notion of equality, because that's what I felt. I never felt unequal to anyone. But when you came out of your own comfort, when you're, your own home, I realized that the world for women was so tilted, was so distorted, that it used to make me completely smolder inside with anger. I would see women walking barefoot on dirt track, carrying heavy loads on their heads, while their husbands would be walking with chappals. I would see that, even at our own house, I would see my mother handling so many things. And while there was a lot of love and everything, still the responsibilities were skewed. There was a lot of molestation at that time in Delhi. So one was always aware of these things. And when you came to a rural area, suddenly what happened was that from a very, very confident person, when I went into the marketplace, let's say to buy hardware or to buy anything which was not a womanly thing to buy, I was invisible. People would talk to my partner, people would talk to the man next to me. But if I went and said that I need a gate valve or I need electrical wire, it would be a blank look. And they would say, for what? It was that kind of thing. So, my own experience was very different when I went to a rural area. And when we worked with women, I always felt that, when you come from a certain kind of background and you see oppression, you feel that people would be oppressed, and women are going to be so oppressed, and they were in that sense, but it never was their spirit. Their spirit was the opposite of that. I don't know how to say this, but they were not victims.
Yeah.
They did not appear like victims, they did not think like victims, and they would always have this strong, almost humorous attitude towards weakness, towards vulnerability. So I learned a lot like that. Here you thought that, you are going to do something for them, but actually they are the ones who taught me so many things that I would have never otherwise learned. So
Can you
slowly,
give me an example? Because this is a nice contrast. that we think those of us from the urban areas have a one-up over women, but women in the rural
Always,
areas
always.
are
And
truly empowered. So can you give me an example of
sure, yeah.
this?
Our entire life is an example. An earthen dam is very technical, and it's a whole engineering. Earthen engineering itself is a whole subject where you have to understand soil, you have to understand how soils come together, what is the composition, how will it rest, how will it compact, so many things in the making of a dam. So we did not know that. It is the women who would tell us, and the men also who would tell us that this soil is good for the core of the dam. This soil is good to be, the cover. That grass will work to bind the dam. Whatever. I mean, even agriculture, we learned it like that. Every blade of grass, every seed. We did not know that. So they taught us, and you were clueless. So I always say, and I always write this, one is your birthplace in the sense of where you were born. But we were all born in the village, Nimkheda, where we started in Madhya Pradesh, because you learned everything from scratch from these women. Even stitching, for instance, okay, you're teaching them stitching, and you think that you're solving some problem for them, and it's a skill, and they will start earning money, all of which happened. But how you always come with the idea that you're solving a problem. But for many women who are not used to sitting still in one place, these are women who are used to moving, from forest to field. I mean, they're just constantly carrying head loads. They're physically active women, and you're making them sit still and concentrate on a straight stitch. So many times they would just get up and say in Hindi, and they would call me Bhenji, that Bhenji, इससे तो कपास बीनना अच्छा है. कपास बीनना अच्छा मतलब it's better to pick cotton. Really something like standing in the sun and picking cotton, and at the end of picking cotton you get a pittance. That's how they used to be. So yeah, it was a lot learning from all these women. What we felt at that point was that whatever we do, the amount of load that women carry on their shoulders, whether it is fetching water or collecting firewood or getting fodder or cooking or weeding or sewing, all the activities that they do ensure survival. There's some form of economic activity that is unrecognized, that is, invisible, that is unaccounted. And because of that, I would always feel when there were village meetings that men would be there. They always had the time, but the women would be absent. And they were not absent because, as is traditionally assumed, that, oh, women are submissive or they're shy or traditionally they don't have a position. They just did not attend those meetings because they never had the time. They were working from 4 a.m. in the morning till 10 at night. They did not have the time because they used to ensure that the entire family has to live. And that is what they would do.
Yeah.
So how to ensure that participation? And when they said that, okay, we want to learn how to stitch, I started thinking of all these questions. Of course, I also thought of land rights and so many other things, that we should ensure that. But I also realized that women have to have some means of their own. They have to be economically independent. And that is what this whole stitching thing started. It started a group which today has a name called Kumbaya, where we taught women how to stitch. And I knew how to do patchwork well, patchwork in the sense of working with waste. So in
How did you
1990,
learn it? Where did you learn it from?
I learned it from my mother.
Okay.
So I still have her sewing machine, an Usha sewing machine, which her mother gave to her. So my grandmother from my mother's side and my mother, both were very much into art and craft and painting and naturally doing these things. Like I used to, as a child, I think, save bottles, save every scrap of fabric. I used to stitch my own clothes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that helped me here, where when they said we want to learn how to stitch, I just felt that we could start something. And that was a self-help group we started. Of course, it didn't work as a self-help group, but it turned into a social enterprise. Very soon, whatever patchwork we made was quite by chance picked up by an American wholesaler. And she bought up all the bed covers for quite an exorbitant price. which really surprised me. But I realized that I could turn it into a livelihood. And since then to now, it's been more than 30 years. And all the women are today the owners of the company. It's called Kumbaya Producer Company Limited. And they are the shareholders. And they've gone through hell and back to do this. Like within the first 2 years, we had this big order. But also, right after that, our center was burned down. So it was very discouraging and very scary that something as harmless as stitching could uh, lead to such a response.
As
But
it was done purposely
it
by.
was done purposely. Yes, it
Oh,
was done
okay.
purposely because, as I said, the 10 friends were also working. We were an organization, no? So we were working on forest rights,
Mm.
water rights. We were against hybrid seeds. So everything that the traditional axis of power was exploiting, we were sort of in the way of that. We were causing a lot of political unrest amongst the vested interests of the area.
How did they even realize that you know to stitch?
I forgot to say that
Yeah.
they noticed it because they would come to our house. So
Oh.
we used to live in where I used to live. There was this sort of, how do I say, like a person, like a small princely state. And
Mm.
they had this completely old fort in which they had cattle sheds. So
Oh.
those cattle sheds, we had gone to rent houses to stay. So they gave us 2 rooms, which were like absolutely tiled roof and kacha floor, very roughly cemented. So we kept taking up more and more rooms, and they kept shifting the cattle further and further away till we finally took over the whole cattle shed because all 10 of us then shifted there, and my parents also joined. I used to like keeping the house pretty and beautiful. So I used to cut up everybody's clothes and make patchwork cushions and bedspreads because we had no money. I couldn't afford a lot of things, and there were 10 people whose places had to be set up. Do a lot of stitching at that time, and these women would come to our house on the village weekly market day, come and visit us and hang around, and then they'd see these cushions and realize that, oh, this is that one's kurta and that is that one's shirt. So they knew that I could.
Okay, but another question, Nivedita. When you are going against the power and
Yes.
the powerful, the village is kind of mixed in between you and them. So, how did you win them over to your end to make sure that you are for their well-being and you are also against the powerful?
That's really it's a very pertinent question because that has shaped so much of our lives. See, initially, Rashmi, we were just not aware of this opposition. We were so immersed in our work, in understanding, as I told you, what is this blade of grass about, and what is that tree in the forest, and what does that fruit do?
Mm.
What are these seeds like? That we were completely oblivious to
Mm.
the fact that our very, very simple work of making dams and getting composite varieties or thinking about agriculture, digging wells, all of that was creating somewhere a tremor of resistance in, as I said, the vested interests who are
Yeah.
basically, the local bureaucracy, which is, let's say, the forest guards, or we also did things which we were unaware that would create such a. We worked out a common grazing agreement. We worked out we did something as radical as getting the land records updated in the village, where instead of going to the block office, 15,000 people came to our village, and we became the patwaris, the revenue officers, and got those land records updated, with the help of very radical collective. And at that time, we had no idea that, everybody would be getting upset. Politicians got upset with us
Yeah.
and said, what if you stand for election, which we had never any
Thought
intention.
of, yeah.
We realized that our work is leading to a lot of opposition. And somehow people were with us. There were only a few who were against us. But there was a lot of violence in the sense that I told you that apart from the burning, people were sometimes accosted. Sometimes one of our village founders was beaten up. Someone was pushed around. And then what happened, by that time, my father had joined the organization. He left his job when he was 50 years old and joined my work. And my mother continued to work as a university professor because she felt somebody had to earn money.
Yeah.
So when he joined and he saw that we were being pushed around, one day he just went out without our knowledge as such and decided to sit on a hunger strike and said that till people apologize, the people who roughed up, there were some sarpanches and some other politicians. He said, till they apologize, I'm not going to eat. And for the first time, I think our entire community, the village, saw a different kind of protest where it was not violence against violence. It was not an eye for an eye. It was a different kind of resistance, a peaceful resistance where what you're trying to do is to ensure that there's a dialogue, that there's space, that there's room for someone to come and talk to you. And that is exactly what happened. We called it a Nijbal Satyagraha, which is like, a satyagraha of your own, with your own strength. I mean, that's all that we had.
Yeah.
So that is what led to a change. We had to do 2 or 3 of these, I think, over a course of a decade or more. And that is how we resolved these conflicts. And at the same time, people saw that our work was benefiting and that it was very, very transparent. So I think our honesty and the fact that we ensured that everyone was included in this helped us along. It's not that the opposition stopped, but what truly changed, the nature and scale of our work was when we started working with women. So at a point in time after these incidents, we felt that women should come together, and there were these other organizations like the Dhan Foundation and all of them who were working on self-help groups, and we wanted to work with women on self-help groups too. And Kumbaya, although had started like that, but we were very clueless about how to do it. So we made women's groups, and we made men's groups also. And we learned how to do it properly, and and the women's groups, from let's say 5-6 groups, today we are working with 3,000 groups. That's over 45,000 women.
Amen. Okay.
And all of them, 45,000 women are actually come together as 14 different federations. Each federation is of 3,000, 4,000 women who are financially extremely strong. And a federation brings all of them together in vast numbers. So that kind of solidarity then changes everything.
Yeah.
And I always take delight in saying that the men's groups that we started, and it's very bad of me to be happy about it, but whatever it is, the men's groups that we started all failed within 2 years.
Oh, okay.
So, yes. So, people always think that it's easier to work with women. The conclusion, therefore, would be that a lot of people will say that it's much easier to work with women because women are more compliant, they're more submissive.
Yes.
But what I have seen and how I like to think about it, and which I think has got proven again and again in our organization, is that I feel women had the intelligence. They had the intelligence to understand the value of coming together, the value of saving together, the value of leveraging loans from public sector bank to invest in their households, their farms, their businesses, the well-being of their children, in health and education. So it takes a certain type of intelligence to be able to see that, to realize that, to work on it, to practice it, along with, 15 to 20 other women, peace
Yeah.
with consensus, with cooperation. And you've seen 45,000 women do that. The number of loans that they take, are over what, 120, 150 crores. That's what they deal with. So it's that kind of change I've seen, where women have come forward. Now, each federation is working in different regions, different areas in our entire region. All these federations, apart from livelihoods, is also working on social issues, on ensuring that all the government entitlements come to children, come to poor people, come to old people. The ICDS and the Anganwadis and the health schemes. They go to a PHC that is not working
Okay.
and insist that you have a doctor, and it works. It's that kind of change. Today, they're not sitting in their fields selling their small amount of crop at distress prices.
Hmm.
Today, they aggregate and sell it in bulk. And that is a separate company. It's called, Ram Rahim Producer Company, Pragati Producer Company. But it's again a company of almost 6,000 women farmers.
Oh my
So
God.
that has been the kind of difference that
This
has.
is like fascinating, Nivedita. I didn't know this huge spectacle and the spread of magic that has happened. And all of this is in MP alone?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
All of this is in our area. So we began with this tiny place in near Indore called Bagli.
Mm.
And we worked in Devas district. Today we're working in three districts in small, small places, but in over 650 villages. And our organization, the 10 founders are still friends and still together, but they're working on different things now. And now the second line of leadership from the local area has taken over.
Oh, okay.
So yes, they are now heading the organization. So I'm very proud to say that our vision was always that
Mm.
we should become redundant. That is what we knew right from the beginnings. In many ways, today we can say that we are, and these institutions of women are actually leading the development in the area.
And
Um,
what are the different sectors? Like you said, you have orders internationally that the women are catering to. But what are the other sectors that these women, these
so
federations?
they see the major sectors agriculture,
Mm.
where we practice no pesticide farming.
Oh, okay.
So it's not organic, but it is no pesticide,
Mm.
which means organic requires a third party certification, many things. And that's a whole separate subject. But
Mm.
we worked on ensuring that at least our area, the farmers do not use pesticides. And it's a whole protocol that removes pesticide by working on biopesticides and biofertilizers, which can be locally made.
Made, yeah.
So it's a win-win. You're making the product, you're using that in your farm. But again, the main point here is whether it is no pesticide or agriculture or organic. The crucial thing is that no single farmer can do that alone. You have to have an agreement with all the farms around you to ensure that you do not use pesticide, because one farm using pesticide will ensure that all the pests come to your farm if you're
Yeah.
not using.
Yeah.
So it requires consensus.
Yes.
And I think that consensus of farmer after farmer, so more than 40-50% of the village has to agree to practice no pesticide, non-pesticide agriculture for it to work.
Hmm.
So it's a participatory guarantee system, very radical way of ensuring that small and marginal farmers can farm in a healthy and sustainable way. It requires consensus, and I feel that we have only been able to do it because we work with women farmers. So for us, farmers in India are women. They may not have title to land, but we firmly believe that they are the farmers, and not just men.
Truly empowering because this just gives me so much joy listening to it. And as you were talking about the federation and women taking these loans and repaying them, I recall Mohammad Yunus when he started his self-help group. It was first with women when he realized that women repay it. so much on time, and it became a huge hit.
So ours is a step ahead of that. So he, of course, started it, and that led to
Yeah.
various forms of financial inclusion. So
Yes.
he's the pioneer in that sense. The system that we follow is that the organization, we are not a microfinance organization.
Hmm.
So microfinance institutions. So the women's institutions are completely independent of us.
Okay.
So the organization Samaj Pragati Sahayog, for instance, does not touch the money. We have nothing to do with it. We connect the women's groups to public sector banks from where they are independently registered federations. They are registered non-profits who raise the loans and use the money for their own work. So
Hmm.
it's very different. It's their
Okay.
direct connection with the bank. So each woman will have a bank account. Each federation will be independent of other federations and of completely independent from Samaj Pragati Sahayog as well. So we are there for nurturing, for hand holding, for supporting in every way. So whereas a microfinance institution, an MFI, is something that directly works and provides the finance at a
Yeah.
certain interest rate. So
Yeah.
that is a different model. So
Okay.
here the self-help group is also to do with, it's more like a social institution as well. Like when COVID happened, it is these women. So one of the things that is really remarkable, like you were asking in the beginning, how is it that women teach you?
Yeah.
They get, every group will have a surplus. They have an income because they
Mhm.
charge a certain amount of interest and they have that income in the group. That surplus, 50% goes back to the group as their surplus. 50% they reserve, divided into two things. One is a contingency fund, 30% of that. But 20% will be kept as a social fund. They reserve it as a social fund, which is used by their agreement to support some social cause. So a lot of the groups, they have opened digital learning centers for adolescent girls. Like they've bought computers, they've taken up a room, they've set up that place so that every girl can come in a rural area and learn the computer. These are facilities which are not there, which we take so much for granted in urban areas, right? Every child has a computer. Every school will have computers. In rural areas, there's no hope. It's hardly there.
Yeah.
But here, every federation has now opened that. That is just one example. All the women, through their own earnings, have mobile phones. All their accounts come because of a software that one of the professionals in the organization designed a software. Again, not someone from an IT background, someone from the local area who's worked with us and who's today leading the organization. So that software keeps track of in real time of each woman's transactions, loans, interest, everything, which comes on their mobile. During COVID, two things happened. Uh, Everyone knows the lockdown, and it happened at a time when for Kumbaya it was peak season. We were heavily doing orders and very busy, and suddenly everything stopped. And at that time, those 2 months really killed Kumbaya because there was a huge order that we had done, which was not picked up by a buyer. It was over 70 lakhs and all. And we were completely no money, nothing. It is these women who came to our rescue and gave us an order for over 1 lakh masks, just so that we could continue to keep producing something. And that was such a moral support and a financial support. Then, before any of the organizations and even us, before we could start relief works, the women's federations themselves started collecting money and grain to support those people, those migrants who were coming back from urban areas.
Hmm.
So poor women supporting poor women. I think it's a sight I have not seen. And the support, Rashmi, was to the tune of 2 crores over 2 years,
Wow.
entirely done by the women. So it's unimaginable. That
Yeah.
kind of generosity, that kind of open-heartedness is something that one has had the privilege to witness. Like I told you in the beginning, that I wanted to be a doctor.
Hmm.
I wanted to be an architect. In some roundabout way, I wanted to do art. I wanted to teach. All those things have come true. Where today, because I'm working here in this organization, we have a health program. And we have very good friends who are working on health in other parts of the country. And these problems of, when you see health in a rural area, you really understand how skewed development is. The normal health facilities we take for granted are not there.
Yeah.
But because of our work, I learned from the best doctors how to be at least some kind of health worker, where I can understand someone's very common illness. I will know what to do about it. I will know what kind of help to get. I know some rudimentary veterinary care, rudimentary health care, but at least I'm able to help people with whatever I know. So, in that sense, that whole thing of wanting to be able to help people through medical training, a part of it, I can say, one has got the privilege of being able to do. And the other part, which I said I wanted to be an architect. So when we were here, there were no buildings. And as we grew as an organization, the government gave us land on lease. And we got some funds from the Ministry of Rural Development to make a campus where it would be a support voluntary organization for other organizations to come and learn watershed management, other things. Now, who would build that campus? So we had friends who were architects in urban areas. So there are these two famous architects who came, both through friendship again. And again, I had the privilege of working with them and building with them, and that too on innovative architecture. The kind that where you're trying to minimize the use of energy intensive resource, like cement and steel. So, like what Laurie Baker would do, or people who had actually probably studied with him or studied his work. So, learning from these architects, I actually got involved in building, in construction, right from excavation to ordering materials to seeing how they are built and following drawings. And as a result, over the years, I realized that I have a natural bent, a natural affinity for it. It's something that completely absorbed me, and I love creating spaces. So over the years, I've sort of become a builder and an architect now, and I still enjoy doing that. So I've had the chance to build many buildings with these learnings and constantly innovate on how to optimize the materials you have, how to create spaces which are gentle and sensitive, and again, do not use, make people feel peaceful, and yet do not use too many, and are also costless. So that has again been another privilege in life. So I can't help saying that every bit that one could have wished for has happened, and more than that. So one is very grateful actually that one had the opportunity to work not only with great friends, with parents, with family, with making many more friends, and getting the opportunity to do this kind of work.
Wow.
And bring something every day.
Nivedita, one question that is lurking in the back of my mind is today Kumbaya is a thriving social enterprise. So, what do you think is the secret behind this? What is it that the women bring in? And what are the elements that make it so successful?
So, thank you for asking that actually, because it's so Kumbaya is like an outlier, I mean, it's in a rural area. It came out of nowhere. We are in a predominantly agrarian region where there was no marketable craft. So one was taking up stitching to create a livelihood. And I think through that endeavor, through that struggle, through that whole effort, one of the things that I realized is how important design is. How, which one take many ways design is taken for granted in our lives. And one thinks that design is taught in very elite schools, and it is taught in a particular way, which makes a designer or or the attempt to design something very separate from life. But during Kumbaya, I realized the power of design to change things, to create things. And it did not come from some preconceived idea. It literally came from the fact that I was working in a rural area where nothing was available. There was no raw material, there was no machinery, there was no shed, and in the middle of, and no skill. I was working with women who didn't know how to stitch, right? So you're creating the skill itself. And how do you design learning a skill for women who are used to moving all the time? How do you make stillness possible? And then how do you then get raw material? So waste came into my life. It's literally like that. You understand design is not one thing. It's a whole coming together of different things. So it's not just about the product. When we think of design, we think of a form, a result. It'll be a garment or a box or whatever. But actually, design is about the entire journey, the entire process of creation, which comes together in different ways. It doesn't come together because of you, right? You are not instrumental in that. It comes together because of what you see and the resources around you that you use to the best of your ability. And in that, I think what I got more and more involved with was the relevance of that design, that I could choose. I couldn't have chosen at that time, but later on in life, the way design is taught is that you sort of imagine the product first, and then you work backwards to see where you'll get the material, how will it be made, who will make it, where will it be sold. All of that comes later. The first thing is this great inspiration in the designer's mind about a product that they imagine. Whereas I feel design actually is about what you can make out of what you have. That is what design for me means. So I had nothing at that point, but I knew that there was a problem I had to solve, which is creating something for these women to make which could sell in a market. So what is that I could use with the least amount of money? Because there was no money either. What could I get without having to travel too far? What could I get which could be made without electricity? There was no electricity where I was working. So then the sewing machine comes in. You see that a sewing machine could be work without electricity as well. Scraps come in today, which is called circular fashion. Right? You're working with textile waste and dead stock is what actually I started working with, because that is the only thing that one could afford. And through that, one actually managed to create patchwork, because what will you make out of that? I can't make a garment out of bits and pieces. What can I do? I can create a beautiful artwork out of scrap. So the power of design is almost, how do you say? It just falls into place.
Wow. So when you spoke about the big order that came in the very first time and how things moved on, did your design team increase? Because you as a designer have certain designs in mind, but how do you make sure that there are more different ideas coming in? Did you increase the team? Did you ask the women to put in their thought process? How did Kumbaya's range of products come in then?
Basically, I think it was, I was the person designing, but I always felt that design has to be democratic.
Correct.
And although I tried working with several designers, but as I felt, everyone comes with with their own idea, which may not be viable in a rural area, because you don't have the kinds of materials or facilities or infrastructure. So ultimately, by willy-nilly, I got left doing the design jobs. And also, I realized that I'm deeply involved in it. So, I became more and more involved in studying it, in understanding how to design with more impact, but less resources. So one of my design principles is that maximum impact, minimum resources, which is very hard to explain to people who are used to designing with everything available to them. And
Yeah.
also another principle was, how do you maximize the value per unit of time, that whatever the women were stitching should get a very high value, but not take so much of time that it's tedious or that it becomes, phenomenally expensive. So those were things that happened. And also because of that, there was no place to stitch.
Yeah.
So we literally had to build. We built a large, it's called a bhavan. It's a large kind of hall, which is built in the traditional way with wooden trusses and tiled roof and a stone floor, you know. And that is the first center that we built for the, not just for Kumbaya, but it was just one of the first buildings that I ever made. And that became the center later on for Kumbaya to work in, and it is still the best center.
Yes.
Yes, the
Okay.
same traditional structure.
Another question tied to it is, where do you match your buyers then? Do you find out what exactly they need, where the design meets, and that's how you tie up your buyers?
So now, see, one has always been very lucky. Things fell into place, Rashmi. There's nothing that I can say that um, I really tried. All I did was to really work on quality.
Okay.
On That's what I think I did, because there wasn't, India is full of handicraft, and
Correct.
every region has a lot of very, very wonderful craft and skill, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But it is all, and at that time, stitching was not considered a craft
Okay.
because people were doing all kinds of handicraft, and somehow this was not considered. So I focused on fine stitching, which is what I knew. Fine stitching and zero waste. These are the two things I focused on. And somehow I also felt that, India was flooded with this, let's say, clothes that had an Indian traditional garments.
Yeah.
But there was nothing if you wanted a shirt for women or if you wanted a dress. So I focused on creating contemporary clothing, trousers and shirts and dresses. And I think combined with the fact that I was working with dead stock and textile waste, those became very different from what was otherwise available. And
Oh,
that stood out a bit.
oh,
And my friends helped me. There's another organization in the Nilgiris called Keystone Foundation, and they had a shop in Kunur. And they gave me the opportunity, and they were all close friends from college. And they opened the shop because they were working with honey hunters. So they gave me the opportunity to keep some of our products in their shop.
okay.
And from there, people started finding us. A TriFed, one of the large, marketing federations of the Ministry of Tribal Welfare, they found us, and we were in every TriFed shop very soon. And from there, then other people found us. And today, we are working with designers across the world, so who are manufacturing with us. So we are manufacturing with them, and
Well,
some of them are extremely high end. We are working with silks and embroidery, lots of like evening gowns and things. And on the other hand, we're also working with people who are designing with canvas or khadi. So that has been largely, we have been found by people. They have come in search of us all the way. I still find it unbelievable. Every time, I'm talking to somebody from this village. I'm sitting in a village right now, and
mm,
I'm talking to you, or I'm talking to somebody across the world in Europe or England or something. I'm still completely, I find it unbelievable, like a miracle,
yeah.
something like that. It still feels very, very magical to me that this happened. You're
Yeah.
sitting in the middle of nowhere and producing for countries in different parts of the world. So,
Wow. You are magic. And you definitely have magical fingers, which led the way to what you're doing. Wonderful. And any particular story, because you said now the second line has taken over the leadership, any particular story that continues to fascinate you on the work that you had taken more by life's design and how you were led into it, that today when you sit down and connect the dots,
Mm.
any one story, I'm sure you have plenty, but any one story that has stayed with you and always makes you proud and smile at what life chose for you?
Yeah, as you say, there are many, but one that always stands, there are actually two. Can I tell you
Oh,
about
yeah,
two?
yeah, sure, sure.
So, one of the things is that, you always feel, at least in our organization, in all NGOs, you will notice this, that there will be a group of people who are from very professional backgrounds, from elite educational institutions, who are sort of leading the organization. And then there are people from the local area. There's always this divide, not a divide, but a certain type of hierarchy. And I think the way SPS has, we say SPS for Samaj Pragati Sahayog, all these hierarchies somehow were broken. They were, if not completely, obviously not completely absent, but they were broken. Like today, the leadership of the organization is not from people who have come from other states or urban areas. It is actually people who have been in this area, who have been educated here, who have built their capacities while working in the organization. So many of them are local youth who have now worked with us for over 20 years and today are our leaders. And the other thing is that in the other sense, all the women have emerged as fascinating leaders, each one with a different personality, each one with a different strength. And it is beyond a dream, in that sense, to be able to understand different perspectives, which are maybe totally radically opposed to yours. So that has been one experience which, you learn something new from all the people you work with all the time,
Yeah.
how to look at life and politics. And the other thing I feel is, again, what I was telling you about people's generosity, which one of the programs that we do is on malnutrition. It never fails to move me that when you see a child suffering from malnutrition, it is a terrible thing. Think that there is not enough for that child to eat. It's unbelievable that in a country that says that we are fifth in the world in terms of GDP, you have such malnutrition in the area. But one of the deepest moments of humility was when we found many children who were suffering from malnutrition, and the women of the community came forward with bananas and milk from their own meager earnings. They would buy bananas and milk for some other child in some other family to get that child out of severe malnutrition. I don't think I've seen anything so human. And that is what keeps your hope alive, that this is possible.
You briefly did touch on COVID, and COVID has been a huge learning for all of us, whichever space we are operating from and wherever we come from. What has your learning been from COVID, Nivedita?
Well, many things actually, and many surprising things. See, we always think in urban areas, right? When you're in an apartment building or you're anywhere, because of the way life has gone, there's been more and more distance between
Correct.
people. People are not like, let's say, what we had 30 years ago.
Ago.
Communities have changed. People
Yes,
have turned into
yes.
nuclear families, and each with his own, with her own life. But what COVID taught me here as well as in cities was how deeply embedded the sense of community is. One got help, whether it was in an urban area or in a rural, you got help regardless of any kind of deprivation. People just reached out in apartment blocks where nobody knew anybody. If you remember that time, the community just came together to help the elderly, to help people who were sick. That was all spontaneous. There was nothing that was scripted. You remember that spontaneous feeling of strong community coming together to help each other. mostly.
Yeah.
Of course, there are other stories. I remember those as well. But I remember this part very distinctly. And in our area, what happened was that, as in the rest of the country, and we saw how, what happened to all the people who are poor in urban areas. And they all came back to rural areas where they were welcomed with open arms. And
Mm,
that's what we saw. We
mm,
actually saw that
mm,
how the community made space, made arrangements, made provision for those people to come back home
mm,
safely. It
mm.
was a community effort.
Yeah.
At that time, there was a wheat harvest was just ripening. This is March. So wheat is ripening and lockdown has happened. People had just harvested and kept it. Some of them had kept it, some still had to do it. And I remember everybody getting together, this whole women's federations getting together to aggregate the wheat, take it to for milling, to
Mm,
turn it into flour, get it back and distribute that as relief, groceries and flour and everything to people who had come back with nothing. So it was a massive effort, and I actually saw that happening during lockdown. So I think COVID left me with that mixed feeling that community is right there. And what is it in our social arrangements that prevents that community from coming together otherwise? Now that COVID is not there, again, people are back into their fragmented, their indifferent lives. One keeps thinking of how do you get it back? How do you tackle the bigger issues that are there in our lives? What's happening in the world today, Rashmi? I
yeah,
mean, what we're dealing
exactly.
with today
Yeah, yeah.
is completely, a community that is broken down. And I feel that potential is always there. So what should we do? That's what I keep thinking about. What should we do to come together as a core?
I love the silver lining of hope that you're constantly keeping alive in your thought process, which is very evident. And coming to women, Nivedita, a space that you are so immersed in. This year, the theme is give to gain, and you've been living it for the last so many decades.
Ooh.
So, what is it that women have taught you, and what is it that you'd like to tell women who hesitate to come forward to give themselves to anything that they can prove they are good at, but holding themselves back because they don't have the necessary nudge or the opportunity? So, what is it being amidst such empowered women? What is it that you'd like to tell women in general?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't really ever thought of telling anything to any woman because I really feel that I'm completely inspired by all the women around, whether they are, suffering oppression and how they're managing their lives. So there's very little to say because I do feel that the things against women, the things are stacked too high. Even if you're accomplished, even if you've broken out of something, it is still difficult. I can say that, okay, I got all the advantages that any woman can get, but I also suffered immensely because I was a woman and because I was a certain kind of woman trying to do different things. The only thing I would say to women, particularly to women, is one thing is to make friends with women. That's what I feel, that women's solidarity is so important, and being completely there for the other woman, whether however different she may be, it doesn't matter. I mean, that's the first rule. That's like a blood bond you have to have.
Yeah.
So definitely that would be the thing. And generally also I would only talk about that because friendship is not something that is for me, and it is also for all my friends, the 10 friends who are, literally part of me. It is in some ways one thinks of friendship as something spontaneous. Friendship is not that. You have to work at being deep friends. It's
Mm,
hard work. It's noticing all the details. It's being there even when you don't want to.
mm,
It's understanding something that you may not like. So it's a practice. It's trying to work at something and solve it. So that kind of hard work needs to go into friendship. It's
Yeah.
not easy, but I feel it is the most rewarding thing. It's the golden thing that can change the world is friendship. So,
Yeah.
so that's something I would definitely want to speak to every woman about.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the theme is: collaboration, working together, making sure you are together. And I think that sense of sisterhood, once it comes in, it's a beautiful space to work with. And there is someone that you can lean on completely, somebody having your back, and vice versa. So that's so true. And this conversation with you has been so fascinating, so beautiful. You have seen so much more of life and experiences firsthand, which has made your life so rich and so beautiful. So, thank you for sharing this entire journey. But as we conclude, I would love you to give us three life lessons that you would like us to remember.
Again, for as a life lesson, I would again talk about friendship, because I feel that's something we don't pay attention to, and we should. And it is the most joyful thing. It is the most joyful thing to go out and all your life continue to make friends. Make friends with your neighbors, make friends with the shopkeeper, make friends with the auto driver, make friends with the passenger in the metro next to you. So that is the way I feel that, life has meaning, where even for that brief moment, if you just connect with another human being, it's like a spark. You don't know why you're connecting, but I feel it adds to the different sparks of happiness or goodness or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
that is one. The other thing, again, connected to friendship, is definitely learn to love in a certain way. So love is very important. How we love and how that love is, and I'm not talking about just a romantic love. I'm talking about deeply loving people, deeply loving what you do, to understand that, to keep that flame alive. My mother always used to she still says it to me: there's this flame in your heart, of love, and don't let bad experiences extinguish that. So when something is happening to you which is bad, just hold that flame, keep, like, protect that flame with your hand and keep it alive, because it's the most important thing, the ability to love. It doesn't matter whether you're loved in return or not. I
Hmm.
would even go to the extent of saying that it doesn't matter. One has to continue to do. And the third thing I would say, which I would really like to say to everybody, is to be useful. Learn to be useful. So not just good. I've understood that by working here. You come here thinking that you're educated and you have done this or that or whatever. How useful are you? Do you know how to what health problems people are having? Are you good at the computer? Can you do accounts for somebody? Can you cook well? Do you know how to clean a toilet? Can you drive? Do you know how to fix a fan? I think these are things which are important to think about.
Yeah.
That be useful to someone. Learn how to do that. So don't just think that you're accomplished because you come from a certain background. You know that you're good at something. But whatever you're good at, there are many other things that you could also be good at. And whatever you're good at can be used to make someone else's life easier or better or happier. So I would say that yes, usefulness is a very important thing for me.
Okay. So, friendship, love, and being useful.
Quite mundane, but that is
They're so important for being happy. And because joy is something that you create from within. And if you follow these three, I think you'll be joyful all the time. So nothing external can shake that joy from within. So lovely. Thank you so much, Nivedita. God bless you for the work that you're doing. And uh, I only wish and pray that we have more Niveditas like this and your group of friends who have created such a beautiful, beautiful community around where you are and making sure that people thrive. And that utility that you bring in wherever you're going is something that should spread like a wildfire. Thank you for being you. God bless you and all the very best. Thank you so much for sharing your story on You and I with Rashmi Shetty.
Thank you, Rashmi, for giving me the opportunity to talk like this. It was really enjoyable talking to you. I have no idea what I've said, but it was just, I don't think anybody's ever asked me about my childhood before. So that was, the start. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. With that, we complete this episode of You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Do let us know if you know inspirational people whose story needs to be heard. You can write in at rashmi.thethirdeye@gmail.com. That is rashmi.thethirde@gmail.com.